that we are at stage 10,
Mm-hmm.
paragraph page 891.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and our last headword was mountaineer, newer type of lesson.
Mm,
Okay,
that's
so let's
right.
start with revision. Ready? Okay, here we go. First question. Are the police allowed to follow a criminal across the borders of their own country into another country? Are the police allowed to follow a criminal across the borders of their own country into another country? No. The police aren't allowed to follow a criminal into their own country into another country. Okay, so which countries does your country share a border with? Which
Mm-hmm.
countries does your country share a border with? My
Mm-hmm.
country
My country
doesn't share a
does
border
just share borders
with any country.
with any countries.
Very good. What do we generally find along the borders of a field? What do we generally find along the borders of a field? We generally find
We generally
a
find
hedge
a hedge
or a fence
or a fence
along the borders
along the
of a
borders
field.
of a field.
Very good. Do you prefer plain clothes or clothes with patterns on them? Do you prefer plain clothes or clothes with patterns on them? I prefer
I prefer plain clothes
than clothes
than clothes
with patterns
with
on them.
patterns on them.
Very good. Who do you think should be more responsible for setting the correct patterns of behavior for children, parents or teachers? Who do you think should be more responsible for setting the correct patterns of behavior for children, parents or teachers? I think
Mhm. I think parents
should be more
should be
responsible
more
for
responsible
setting the
for
correct
setting
pattern
correct pattern
of behavior
of
for
behavior
children.
or children.
Very good. Do some people get into financial difficulties through spending too much on their credit cards? Do some people get into financial difficulties through spending too much on their credit cards? Yes. Some
Yes,
people
some
get
people
into
get into
financial difficulties
financial difficulties
through spending too
through
much
spending too
on their
much
credit cards.
on their credit card.
Very good. What am I doing? What am I doing? You're weaving
You are
the
weaving
first finger
the first
of
finger
your right hand
of your right
over
hand
and under
over and
the
under
fingers
the
of
fingers
your left hand.
of your left hand.
Very good. What are the three forms of weave? What are the three forms of weave? The three
The
forms
three
of
forms
weave
of weave
are weave,
are weave
woven.
or woven.
Very good. Okay. Next, what kind of things can we make by weaving? What kind of things can we make by weaving? We can make cloth,
We can make clothes,
baskets,
baskets,
etc. by
etc.
weaving.
by weaving.
Very good. Are there any parts of your country that have been ruined by tourism? Are there any parts of your country that had been ruined by tourism? Yes or no?
Yes,
There are some
there
parts
are some
of
parts
my country
of my
that
country
have been ruined,
that ruined,
have been ruined
have been ruined
by tourism.
by tragedies,
Tourism.
tourism.
Very good. Are there any old ruins in your hometown? Are there any old ruins in your hometown? Yes or no?
Yes,
There are
there
some
are
old
some
ruins
old ruins
in my hometown.
in my old hometown.
What are they? What are they? They are ruins of.
Their ruins are old schools.
Very good. Okay, next. What am I doing? What am I doing? You're whispering.
You are whispering.
Do people why do people whisper? Why do people whisper? People whisper
People whisper
because they don't
because
want
they
others
don't want
to
others
hear what
to
they're
hear
saying.
what they are saying.
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 Very good. How do you prefer to see a living room lit with overhead lights or with lamps? How do you prefer to see a living room lit with overhead lights or with lamps? I
Mhm.
prefer to see
I prefer to
a
see
living room lit
a living room lit
with
with
overhead lights.
overhead lights.
Very good. Do most people in your area keep their cars in garages or leave them in the street? Do most people in your area keep their cars in garages or leave them in the street?
Mhm.
Most people
Most
in my
people
area
in my area
keep their cars
keep their
in
cars
garages.
in garages.
Very good. If you suddenly do a lot of physical exercise after a long period of not having done any exercise at all, do your muscle feel stiff the next day? If you suddenly do a lot of physical exercise after a long period of not having done any exercise at all, do your
Mhm,
muscle feel stiff the next day? Yes.
mhm.
If I
Yes,
suddenly
if I
do a
suddenly
lot of
do the R
physical
of physical
exercise
exercise
after a long period
after a long
of
period
not having
of
done
not having
any
done
exercise at
any
home,
exercises at home,
my muscles
my muscles
feel stiff the next day.
feel stiff the
The
next
next day.
day.
Very good. What is a cereal box usually made of? What is a cereal box usually made of? A cereal box
A cereal
is
box
usually made
is
of
usually
cardboard.
made of cardboard.
Very good. Would you be astonished if one of your family members walk into the room right now? Would you be astonished if one of your family members walk into the room right now? Yes or no?
No,
I wouldn't be
I wouldn't
astonished
be
if
astonished
one of
if
my
one
family
of my
members
family members
walked into the room
walk
right
into the
now.
room right now.
Megan, what's the noun of the verb to refuse? What's the noun of the verb to refuse? The noun
The
of the
noun
verb
of
to
the verb
refuse
to
is
refuse is
refusal.
refusal.
Give me an example. Give me an example, please. Her refusal
Our
to listen
refusal
to
to
other
listen
people's
to
opinions
other people's opinions
means that
means
she
that
will never
she
be
will never
a
be
good manager.
a good manager.
Very good. Is England bounded on all sides by the sea? Is England bounded on all sides by the sea? No, England
No,
isn't
England isn't
bounded on all
bounded
sides
on all
by
sides
the sea.
by the
It
sea.
shares borders
It shares all borders
with Scotland and
with
Wales.
Scotland and Wales.
Wait, what does a sign on the door saying out of bound mean? What does a sign on the door saying out of bound mean? A sign on a
A
door
sign
saying
on the door saying
out of bounds
out
mean
of bound
that
mean
nobody is
that
allowed
nobody
to
is
enter the
allowed
area
to enter the
beyond the
area
door.
beyond the door.
Wait, how does one generally mark the boundary of one's property? How does one generally mark the boundary of one's property? One generally
One
marks
generally
the
marks
boundary
the
of
boundary
one's
of
property
one's
with a
property
wall,
with a wall,
fence,
fence,
hedge,
hedge,
etc.
etc.
Very good. What's a wasp likely to do if it lands on you while you're sunbathing and you disturb it? What's a wasp likely to do if it lands on you while you're sunbathing and you disturb it? If a wasp
If a wasp
lands on you
lands on
while
you
you're
while
sunbathing
you're
and you
sunbathing
disturb it,
and you disturb
it's
it,
likely to sting
it's
you.
likely to sting you.
Megan, which do you think is more painful to be stung by, a bee or a wasp? Which do you think is more painful to be stung by, a bee or a wasp? I think
Mhm.
it's
I
more
think
painful
it's more
to be
painful to be
stung by a
stung by a wasp.
wasp. From what else do we get the stinging sensation? From what else do we get the stinging sensation? We get a
We get
stinging
a
sensation
sting sensation
when we are slapped
when we are
by
slapped
someone,
by someone,
when we clean a
when
wound,
we clean the wound,
etc.
etc.
Very good. What do we call a piece of hair that forms the shape of a ring? What do we call the piece of hair that forms the shape of a ring? We call a
We
piece of
call
hair
a piece of
that
hair
forms the
that
shape
formed the shape
of a ring,
of a
a
ring,
curl.
a car.
Does smoke curls upwards when there's a strong wind? Does smoke curl upwards when there's a strong wind? No, smoke
No,
doesn't curl
smoke
upwards
doesn't curl upwards
when there's a
when there's
strong wind.
a strong wind.
It gets blown
It
away.
gets blown
Dragon
away.
blown away. Why do cats and dogs often curl up when they sleep? Why do cats and dogs often curl up when they sleep? Cats and dogs
Cats and
often
dogs
curl up
often curl
when
up
they sleep
when they sleep
because it
because
prevents the
it
heat
prevents the
from their
heat
bodies
from their bodies
from escaping.
from escaping.
Very good. Okay, next. What's a paste? What's a paste? A paste
A
is a
paste
mixture
is a mixture
made from a powder
made from a
and a
powder
liquid.
and a liquid.
Wait, when you go to stay at someone else's house, do you take your own toothpaste with you? Or do you ask to use their toothpaste? When you go to stay at someone else's house, do you take your own toothpaste with you? Or do you ask them to use their toothpaste? When I
Mhm.
go to
When I
stay
go To
at
stay
someone
at
else's
someone's
house,
houses,
else's
someone else's
house,
houses, someone
or
else's
when
house.
I go to
When I
stay
go to stay
at someone
at someone
else's house,
else's house,
I
I take my
own
tooth
toothpaste with me.
own toothpaste with me.
Very good. Does one have to have a creative imagination to write a novel? Does one have to have a creative imagination to write a novel? Yes, one
Yes,
has to
one
have
has to
a
have
creative
a creative
imagination to
imagination
write a novel.
to write a novel.
Very good. What's a store? What's a store? A store
A
is a
store
shop
is a shop
which sells
which
a
sells
variety of
a
different
variety of
goods.
different goods.
It can either be a very
It could be
large,
very
well,
large.
it can either
It
be
can either
a
be
very large shop
a very large
in the
shop
city
in the
which
city
sells food,
which sells food,
clothes, furniture,
clothes,
and
furniture,
almost
and
anything
almost
you can
anything
think of.
you can think
Or
of.
it can be
Or it
a
can
shop
be
in a
a
village
shop in a
that
village
sells
and sells
many different
many
products
different
that the
products
people in
that
the
the people
village
in the
might
village
need.
might need.
Where should wine be stored in a warm or cool environment? Should wine be stored in a warm or cool environment? Wine should be stored
Wine could be
in a
stored
cool
in a
environment.
cool environment.
Do you keep a store of tin food at home? Do you keep a store of tin food at home? Yes or no?
Oh, yes,
I keep a
I
store
keep a
of
store
tin food
of tin
at
food
home.
at home.
Very good. Okay, next. What was your favorite toy when you were a child? What was your favorite toy when you were a child? My favorite toy
My favorite
when I
toy
was a
when
child
I was a child
was
was a stuffed animal toy.
stuffed animal toy. Very good. If you attempted to learn another language at the same time as English, do you think you'd get confused? If you attempted to learn another language at the same time as English, do you think you'd get confused? Yes or no?
Mm. Oh, yes.
If I attempted
If
to
I
learn
attempt to
another
learn
language
another
at the
language
same time
at the
as
same time
English,
as
I
English,
think I'd
I
get
think
confused.
I get confused.
Where it was Mount Everest conquered at first attempt? Was Mount Everest conquered at first attempt? No. Mount
No,
Everest
Mount Everest
wasn't conquered
wasn't
at
conquered
the first attempt.
at the first attempt.
Many
Many
mountaineers
mountaineers
attempted to climb it
attempted to climb it
before it was
before it
finally
was
conquered.
finally conquered.
Very good. So that's the end of our revision. Let's have new
Mhm,
word. Okay,
mhm.
repeat. Bow,
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 bow tie,
bow tie,
rainbow.
rainbow.
Very good. Okay, listen. The difference between bow and bow is that bow is a noun
Mm,
and bow is a verb.
mm,
Bow tie is a noun. It is something
mhm,
that men wear around their neck. For
mhm,
example, men wear bow ties in formal occasions, especially with
mhm,
tuxedo. Bow is a verb, means to greet someone. For example,
mhm,
Japan is a country where it's common to bow when you're
mhm,
introduced to someone in a formal
mhm,
situation. So you bow.
mhm,
Rainbow is a noun. It is a shaped curve that appears in the sky
mhm,
with different colors, usually after the rain. So that's why it's called
mhm,
the rainbow. For
mhm,
example, I always want to see a rainbow after the rain. Let's practice. Do men sometimes have to wear bow ties in very formal occasions? Do men sometimes have to wear bow ties in very formal occasions? Yes, men
Yes,
sometimes
men sometimes
have to wear bow
have to
ties
wear bow ties
on very formal
on
occasions.
very formal occasions.
What two things do we need for a rainbow to appear? What two things do we need for a rainbow to appear? We need the sunshine
We need
and
sunshine
drops of water
and drops of water
in the atmosphere
in the
for a
atmosphere
rainbow
for a
to
rainbow
appear.
to appear.
Wait, name a country where it's common to bow when you're introduced to someone in a formal situation. Name a country where it's common to bow when you're introduced to someone in formal situation.
Mhm.
Japan is a
Japan
country
is a
where
country
it's common
where it's
to
common
bow when
to
you're
bow when
introduced
you're
to
introduced
someone
to
in a
someone
formal
in a
situation.
formal situation.
Very good. Okay, so now let's move on to reading.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, very good. Okay, so reading is at stage 8, paragraph page 604. Last
Mm-hmm.
headword was naturally. Okay, start with
Mm-hmm.
headword. Recent, so so.
Okay. Recent. So. What is the most recent film you have seen? The most recent film I have seen was mm,
What did you want? Top
no.
Gun,
Top
Mario
Gun. Oh,
Brothers, the
Mario Brothers.
Mario
Mario
Brothers.
Brothers.
Very good.
Yeah. What was it like? That is, was it good, bad, or just so-so? Oh, it was good.
Good.
Have you good? It
Very good.
was good.
Have you?
Oh, have you been to any concert recently? No, I haven't been to any concert recently. Mate, housemate, flatmate, classmate, workmate. What can we